Hi everyone, it's Nelly here doing a Patreon video. Pretty much, I was originally going to describe my comic creation process, but this month I'm also feeling just kind of showing you how I draw Jerry. Going from the base structure to the finalized form, how I create him, and also just kind of how he was created in the beginning of time. Because as the old saying goes, in the first day, God made light or something. I don't know. He made pudding. I don't really pay attention to religion. But in the first day, God made something. And in the second day, he made Jerry. So that's where we are now. We're doing God's work. I wouldn't probably repeat that to any churchgoers. But between you and me, we're doing God's work. And yeah, so here's how I draw Jerry, generally. I say generally because it changes a fair bit. His facial structure changes a fair bit depending on how good I feel at drawing that day. But pretty much I start off with a classic base shape that you'll see anywhere, which is usually just a circle or a little man's head, or a circle that I turn into a man's head. Then once I have this base form down, I use the classic crosshatch thing, whatever it's called, I'm not really too sure. And then this pretty much gives me his eye placement, and then once his eyes are placed on a head, I know where everything else goes. And that's mainly just because I've been doing this for a long time. But it's a good thing to note in drawing is that if your eyes are in the wrong place, everything else is going to be ruined. So on the flip side, if your eyes are in the right place, you can kind of base all of your measurements off that. So here I'm just going to kind of speed through me drawing him a little bit, just to kind of show you just what he looks like before all the refinement and stuff. And that I don't really ever use, well actually I don't ever use pre-drawn things for Jerry. Every time you see him, he's always been drawn new. Even if it's drawn on the same angle, the same perspective, same position, I always tend to draw him new because it's good practice, and two, it always felt a little bit cheap to just kind of take art from other comics and just slap them into a new one. So there you go. So you can pretty much see the general structure I went with there. And that's honestly just using basic anatomy. The reason that Jerry, I like doing him, but he's quite difficult to do. Mainly for the fact that he is mostly based on real human anatomy, which makes it very easy for him to look wrong. And that's something you want to be careful with. If you're ever drawing a character and you want your character to look real, or to at least have semi-realistic proportions, it means that... Oh, sorry, burped. It means that if your character has a slight error anywhere, he's going to look wrong immediately. It's not like a stylized character, like a Pikachu or like SpongeBob, where you can change things and morph his form and it still looks relatively fine. With a human-like figure, if you edit anything that is not a part of his, realistic anatomy or realistic structure, it's going to look fucked up. So something that's very good to consider whenever you're creating a character or whenever you're drawing something. If you want to draw a person, that's great, but you've got to make sure you're going to be precise. You've got to know your ins and outs. You've got to know your fundamentals. You've got to know what things look like at a base level. And a very good piece of advice I heard a long time ago that's always stuck with me is that if it looks right, it probably is. So always follow that. If it looks right, it almost always is right, especially with people. With trees, not so much, because I can see a tree and like, that looks right. And then I wake up the next day and be like, it actually looks like a giant turd with a bunch of fucking fingers hanging out of it. But with people, if it looks right, it almost always is right. So that's like the first little video just of me drawing Jerry and explaining some of my process. If you guys like this kind of video, let me know. I'm going to be aiming to release a few of these this month. I just kind of want to get more into this sort of content as well, and showing you guys more behind the scenes and just general things. I will eventually have a time lapse of me drawing an entire comic, so stay tuned for that, and thanks for listening. I love you all. Bye!